Captain Jake Morrison stepped through the airlock of the abandoned mining station, his boots echoing in the empty metal corridors. The air tasted stale and cold, like breathing inside an old refrigerator. Behind him, 3 crew members from the human ship Frontier's Edge followed with their equipment bags and scanning tools. "Place gives me the creeps," muttered Danny Rodriguez, Jake's second in command. He swept his flashlight beam across the dark hallway. Emergency lights flickered weakly every few seconds, casting strange shadows on the walls. "Just another dead." "Station," Jake replied, checking his handheld scanner. "Corporate mining operation went bust 3 years ago. Should be plenty of salvage left behind." He paused and looked at the readings. Computer cores, metal plating, maybe some rare elements they couldn't haul out in time. The team moved deeper into the station. Their mission was simple: find anything valuable that the previous owners had abandoned. Space salvage was legal, as long as the property had been officially deserted for more than 2 years. This place qualified. Lisa Chun, the ship's doctor who doubled as their electronics expert, knelt beside a control panel. "Power's still running on backup systems," she said, connecting her scanner to the station's network. "Looks like the main computers are still active too. Might be some good data we can sell." The 4th team member, Carlos Martinez, examined the structural supports above them. As their engineer, he knew what materials were worth the effort to cut out and haul back to their ship. "Good quality steel here, some rare alloy components too. We could make decent money if we strip the right sections." Jake nodded and checked his watch. They had 6 hours before they needed to return to the ship, split up and cover more ground. "Danny, take the upper levels. Lisa, work on the computer systems." Carlos checked the industrial sections for valuable metals. He adjusted his comm unit. "I'll take the lower maintenance levels." Nobody goes anywhere alone for more than 30 minutes. The team separated, their footsteps fading in different directions. Jake found a stairwell leading down to the station's basement levels. His flashlight beam revealed narrow corridors lined with pipes and electrical conduits. This was where the station's life support and power systems had been housed. As he walked, Jake's trained eye spotted several items worth taking. Some rare metal junction boxes, a few expensive sensor arrays that the previous owners had left behind. He marked their locations on his scanner and continued exploring. That's when he heard it, a soft scraping sound, like something being dragged across metal. Then a quiet rustling, almost like paper being crumpled. Jake stopped walking and listened. Carefully. The sounds came from somewhere ahead, deeper in the maintenance section. His first thought was that some of the station's automated systems might still be running. Maybe a cleaning robot or some kind of maintenance equipment. But the sounds were too irregular, too random for machines. Jake moved forward slowly, trying to be quiet. The sounds grew louder as he approached a junction where several corridors met. He could see a faint light coming from around the corner. Not electric light, but something dimmer and bluer. He reached the corner and carefully looked. Around it, what he saw made him freeze in shock. A small figure was crouched beside a pile of debris and garbage. It was clearly not human. The creature was thin, much too thin, with pale skin that seemed to glow softly with patches of blue light. Long, delicate arms ended in hands with too many fingers. The being's head was larger than a human's, with huge dark eyes that took up most of its face. The creature was searching through the trash, picking up scraps of cloth and metal pieces. Its movements were desperate and shaky. Jake could see it trembling, whether from cold or fear or hunger. He couldn't tell. As Jake watched, the being found a torn piece of fabric, maybe part of an old uniform. It held the cloth against its body, trying to cover itself. The creature was wearing almost nothing, just a few rags that barely qualified as clothing. Jake realized he was looking at someone who had been left behind when the station was evacuated. Someone who had been surviving alone in this cold. Empty place for 3 years. He took a step closer, and a piece of loose metal under his boot made a small clanking sound. The creature's head snapped up, those huge dark eyes locking onto Jake's face. For a moment, neither moved. Then the being tried to run. It scrambled to its feet and took 3 quick steps before its legs gave out. The creature collapsed against a wall, breathing hard, clearly too weak to flee. Jake held up his hands, palms out, in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "Hey, it's okay," he said softly. "I'm not going to hurt you." The creature pressed itself against the wall, still trembling. It made a soft sound, maybe trying to speak, but Jake couldn't understand the words. Jake slowly unzipped his thermal jacket, the one designed to keep humans warm in the cold vacuum of space. Without the jacket, he would be cold, but he wouldn't freeze. This creature looked like it might not last another day. "Here," Jake said, moving very slowly toward the being. "You look cold." The creature watched him with those enormous eyes too. Scared to move but too weak to run away, Jake knelt down a few feet away and held out his jacket. The creature stared at the offered clothing like it couldn't believe what it was seeing. "It's okay," Jake repeated. "Take it." The being reached out with one shaking hand and touched the jacket. The fabric was warm from Jake's body heat, and the creature's eyes went wide. It quickly pulled the jacket against itself, wrapping it around its thin shoulders. For the first time since Jake had seen it, the creature stopped trembling quite as much. Jake activated his comm unit, but instead of calling for backup or security, he switched to the medical channel. "Lisa, I need you down. In maintenance level 3. Bring your medical kit." "What's wrong?" Lisa's voice crackled through the speaker. "Are you hurt?" "Negative, but I found someone who needs help." Jake looked at the creature, who was still clutching his jacket like a lifeline. The being was trying to say something, and after a few attempts, Jake made out a few words in Broken Standard, the common language used for trade between species. "Cold," the creature whispered. "So cold, looking for warm things. Sorry for taking." Jake felt something tight in his chest. This person had been alone for years, surviving on scraps, and was apologizing for trying to keep warm. "You don't need to be sorry," Jake said gently. "And you don't need to look for scraps anymore." The creature tilted its large head, not understanding. Jake stood up slowly and extended his hand toward the being. "My name is Jake. What's yours?" The creature hesitated, then whispered, "Zara. Nice to meet you, Zara." Jake kept his voice calm and friendly. "Listen, I have a ship. It's warm there, and there's food. Good food, not garbage." He paused. "You don't have to stay here anymore." Zara stared at him with those huge dark eyes, and Jake could see she was trying to understand if this was real or just a dream. "Come home with us," Jake said simply. The words seemed to hit Zara like a physical force. She looked down at the warm jacket wrapped around her, then back up at Jake's face. For the first time, something like hope appeared in her expression. "Home?" she whispered. Jake nodded. "Home." Lisa Chun arrived at the maintenance level 15 minutes later, carrying her medical bag and a portable scanner. She found Jake sitting on the floor next to the alien creature, speaking in low, calm tones. "This is Zara," Jake said as Lisa approached. "She's been living here alone since the station was abandoned." Lisa knelt down and opened her medical kit. She had treated many different alien species during her years in space, but she had never seen one in such poor condition. The being's skin was pale and sickly, and the blue patches that should have been bright were dim and faded. "Hello, Zara," Lisa said softly. "I'm a doctor. I want to help you feel better." Zara pressed herself closer to the wall but didn't try to run. Jake's jacket was still wrapped around her shoulders, and she held it tight like it was the most precious thing she had ever owned. Lisa ran her scanner over Zara's body, being careful not to touch her without permission. The readings made her frown. Jake, we need to get her to the ship immediately. She's severely malnourished and dehydrated. Her body temperature is dangerously low. Can you walk? Jake asked Zara gently. Zara nodded, though she looked uncertain. With Jake's help, she managed to stand up. Her legs shook, but she stayed upright. The trip back to the frontier's edge took 20 minutes. Jake and Lisa walked slowly, letting Zara rest whenever she needed to. The other crew members met them. At the airlock, their eyes wide with surprise. "Captain," Danny Rodriguez said quietly, "what exactly are we dealing with here?" "Someone who needed help," Jake replied firmly. "Lisa, get her to the medical bay. I'll be there in a few minutes." As Lisa led Zara away, Danny grabbed Jake's arm. "Sir, we need to talk about this. Finding survivors on an abandoned station is a big deal. There are protocols, reports we need to file." "Later," Jake said. "Right now, she needs medical attention." In the medical bay, Lisa worked quickly to stabilize Zara. She started in 4 to get fluids into her system and ran more detailed scans to check for diseases or injuries. Zara lay on the examination table, still clutching Jake's jacket, watching. Everything with those large, frightened eyes. "It's okay," Lisa kept saying. "You're safe now. We're going to help you." After an hour of treatment, Zara was stable enough to talk. Jake sat beside the medical bed while Lisa explained what she had. "Found. She's a Velrani," Lisa said, checking her database. "They're from the Kepler system, about 40 light years from here. The interesting thing is, Velrani are supposed to be really hardy. They can survive in harsh conditions that would kill most other species. But Zara is in terrible shape. What would cause that?" Jake asked. Lisa pulled up more information on her computer. Velrani need specific nutrients that most other species don't. Without those nutrients, they get sick very quickly. The emergency food supplies on the station wouldn't have what she needed. Jake turned to Zara. "Can you tell us what happened here? How did you end up alone?" Zara was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was so soft they had to lean in to hear her. "My people, we worked for the mining company, the Hegemony Corporation. They said we owed them money for bringing us here, for food and housing. We had to work to pay the debt." "That sounds like indentured servitude," Lisa said, her voice tight with anger. Zara nodded. "We worked very hard. In the deep mines, the dangerous places. The company said we would earn our freedom eventually, but the debt never got smaller. Always more costs, more fees. What happened when the station was evacuated?" Jake asked. Zara's eyes filled with tears. "The humans and other species, they got on ships and left. My people asked about leaving too. The company boss said we were company property. We couldn't leave until our debts were paid. But there was no more money coming in, so we could never pay." Jake felt a cold anger building in his chest. "They left you here to die." "Most of my people died in the first year," Zara continued. "The food ran out. The heating system started failing. I was small, so I could hide in the maintenance tunnels where it was warmer. I learned to eat whatever I could find." Lisa's scanner beeped, and she checked the readings. "Zara, how long since you've eaten real food?" "Real food?" Zara looked confused. "You mean not from the garbage?" "Yes, a proper meal." Zara thought for a moment. "Maybe 2 years. There were still some emergency rations left then. But they made me sick, wrong nutrients for Velrani." Jake stood up, his hands clenched into fists. "Lisa, keep taking care of her. I need to talk to the crew." In the ship's common room, Jake found Danny, Carlos, and Beth Williams, their communications officer. They all looked worried. "Captain," Beth said, "I've been monitoring corporate communication channels. The Hegemony Corporation still lists this station as active property. If they find out we took someone from here, they could claim we stole from them." "She's not property," Jake said firmly. "She's a person." "I know that," Beth replied. But the law might see it differently. Corporate contracts with alien workers can be complicated. Carlos leaned forward. What are we talking about? Here. Are we in legal trouble? Danny pulled up a file on his tablet. I've been researching the Hegemony Corporation. They have a reputation for using cheap alien labor and abandoning workers when projects fail. There are dozens of complaints filed against them, but they always find legal ways to avoid responsibility. So they've done this before, Jake said, many times. And they always claim the workers were company property, not employees. It's a legal loophole that lets them avoid paying termination costs or transportation fees. Beth's communication console shined. She checked the incoming message and her face went pale. Captain, we have a problem. I just intercepted a corporate transmission. The Hegemony Corporation knows we're here. They're sending a ship to reclaim their property. How long do we have? Jake asked. The corporate ship will be here in 18 hours. Jake looked around at his crew. He could see the worry in their faces. Taking Zara meant risking a confrontation with a powerful corporation. It could mean legal trouble, lost salvage rights, maybe even criminal charges. But when he thought about Zara, alone and starving in that cold maintenance tunnel, searching through garbage for scraps of cloth to keep warm, the choice was clear. We're not giving her back, Jake said. Danny stood up. Captain, I support you completely, but we need to think about this. The corporate ship will be armed and faster than us. If they want to take her by force, we can't stop them. Then we better make sure we're not here when they arrive, Jake replied. Carlos nodded. I can push the engines harder than normal. We might be able to reach human space before they catch us. Do it, Jake ordered. Beth, send a message to Human Colonial Authority. Let them know we're coming in with a refugee who needs protection. As the crew scattered to prepare for departure, Jake returned to the medical bay. Zara was sitting up, now looking much better after Lisa's treatment. She had color in her cheeks, and the blue patches on her skin were starting to glow brighter. How are you feeling? Jake asked. Better, Zara said. The doctor gave me medicines that taste like home. She paused. The food you gave me, it was the best thing I have eaten in 3 years. Lisa had prepared a meal with the nutrients Zara needed. It was the first proper Velreni food Zara had tasted since being abandoned. Zara, Jake said, I need to tell you something. The company that left you here, they're coming back. They want to take you away from us. Fear flashed in Zara's eyes. Will you let them? Jake met her gaze steadily. No, you're part of our crew now. We don't abandon our people. Zara stared at him for a long moment. Why? Why would you risk trouble? For me? You don't even know me. Jake thought about the question. Other species might calculate the risks and benefits, weigh the legal implications, consider the financial costs. But humans had a different way of looking at things. Because it's the right thing to do, Jake said simply. And because the moment I saw you searching through that garbage, cold and alone, you became our responsibility. Zara's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were tears of hope, not despair. Thank you, she whispered. The ship's engines came to life, and Jake felt the familiar vibration as they prepared to leave the mining station behind. But this time, they weren't just carrying salvage. They were carrying someone who had been thrown away and forgotten, someone who deserved a chance at a better life. The corporate ship was coming, and Jake knew the real test was still ahead. The Frontier's Edge left the mining station at maximum speed, its engines pushing harder than they were designed to handle. In the engine room, Carlos Martinez watched the temperature gauges climb toward dangerous levels. Come on, baby, he muttered. To the ship, adjusting power flows and rerouting coolant systems. Just hold together a little longer. On the bridge, Jake studied the navigation display. The nearest human colony was 6 days away at normal speed. At their current pace, They might make it in 4 days, but the engines wouldn't last that long. Running this hot. Captain, Beth Williams called from her communications station. I'm picking up a ship on long-range sensors. It's moving fast and heading straight for us. Jake's jaw tightened. How long until they reach us? At their current speed, maybe 12 hours. Danny Rodriguez checked his tactical display. It's a corporate security vessel, the Profit Margin. They're armed with military-grade weapons, and they're definitely faster than us. In the medical bay, Lisa continued monitoring Zara's condition. The alien woman was recovering quickly now that she had proper food and medical care. Her skin had regained its healthy glow, and she was strong enough to walk around the ship. Doctor, Zara said quietly, the crew is in danger because of me. Maybe I should go back to the corporation. Then they would leave you alone. Lisa looked up from her medical instruments. That's not going to happen. Captain Morrison made his decision, and we all support it. But why? Zara asked. I don't understand. In my culture, the good of the group always comes first. If saving me puts everyone else at risk, the logical choice is to sacrifice me. Lisa sat down beside Zara. Humans don't always make logical choices. We make moral ones. And morally, what the corporation did to you and your people was wrong. We're not going to let them get away with it. On the bridge, Jake was pushing his crew to find solutions. Carlos, how much more speed can you give me? Carlos's voice crackled over the intercom. I've got the engines running at 120% capacity. Any higher and we risk a complete breakdown. Even at this level, we've got maybe 8 hours before something critical fails. That's not enough time, Danny said, checking their position. The corporate ship will catch us before we reach human space. Beth turned from her station. Captain, I'm intercepting more corporate communications. They're not just planning to take Zara back. They want to arrest us for theft of company property. Jake felt his anger building. She's not property. I know that, sir, but they have legal documents that say otherwise. The Velrini were classified as contracted laborers, and their contracts included clauses that made them corporate assets. What kind of assets? Jake asked. Beth pulled up the documents on her screen. According to this, the Velrini workers agreed to work off their transportation and housing debts. But the contracts were written so that the debt could never be fully paid. Interest charges, equipment fees, housing costs, food expenses. Every month, more money was added to what they owed. Slavery, Danny said grimly. They called it contract labor, but it was really slavery. Jake studied the corporate documents. Beth, transmit all of this to the Human Colonial Authority. Make sure they know what kind of company we're dealing with. Already done, sir. I've also sent copies to several news organizations and civil rights groups. Hours passed as the chase continued. The Profit Margin slowly gained ground on the fleeing human ship. In the engine room, Carlos performed miracles of engineering, keeping the overheated systems running through sheer determination and creative problem-solving. Danny, Jake called to his first officer. What do we know about the corporate ships? Captain? Danny checked his files. Captain Vex Thorne, a Karathi. He's been working corporate security for 15 years. His species values profit above almost everything else. He's got a reputation for always completing his missions, no matter the cost. Ruthless? Very. He's been involved in several incidents where workers tried to break their contracts. The workers always ended up back in corporate custody, usually in worse condition than when they left. Jake looked at the tactical display. The Profit Margin was only 6 hours behind them now, and the gap was closing. At this rate, they would be caught before reaching human space. Captain, Carlos called from engineering. I've got an idea, but it's dangerous. I can dump all our reserve power into the engines for one big burst of speed. It might give us enough of a lead to reach human territory, What's the risk? Jake asked. If it works, we get maybe 2 hours of extra speed before the engines shut down completely. If it doesn't work, we lose power immediately, and they catch us right away. Jake considered the options. They were going to be caught either way. At least this plan gave them a chance. Do it, he ordered. Carlos began rerouting power from life support, artificial gravity, and every non-essential system. The ship shuddered as massive amounts of energy flowed into the engines. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the Frontier's edge leaped forward like a racehorse given free rein. Speed increasing, Danny reported. We're pulling ahead of them. But the corporate ship responded quickly. Captain Thorne pushed his own engines harder, determined not to let his quarry escape. Incoming transmission, Beth announced. Jake nodded. Put it through. The view screen filled with the image of a tall, reptilian alien with cold yellow eyes. Captain Vex Thorne looked exactly like what Jake had expected, a being who saw everything in terms of profit and loss. Human vessel, Thorne said in accented standard. You are carrying stolen corporate property. Return our asset immediately, and we will consider not pressing charges. The person you're referring to is a refugee under human protection, Jake replied. She's not property. Thorne's eyes narrowed. The Velrani signed legal contracts. They belong to the Hegemony Corporation. Until their debts are paid, you are guilty of theft. Those contracts were fraudulent, Jake shot back. Your company abandoned them to die when the station became unprofitable. The contracts made no guarantee of survival, Thorne said coldly. Only of employment until debts were satisfied. The fact that local conditions became challenging is not the corporation's responsibility. Jake felt his temper rising. You left them without food or heat. They died because you abandoned them. They died because they failed to adapt to changing circumstances. Natural selection in action. Now return our property or face the consequences. The transmission ended, leaving Jake staring at a blank screen. He had dealt with many different alien species over the years, but he had never encountered such casual cruelty. Captain, Zara's voice came from behind him. She had come to the bridge during the conversation. He talks about my people like we were machines, things to be used and thrown away. Jake turned to face her. That's not how humans see it. I know. Zara said softly. That's why I don't understand. Why would you risk so much for someone you barely know? Before Jake could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Carlos's voice came over the intercom, tight with strain. Captain, we've got problems down here. The engines are overheating faster than expected. I can give you maybe 30 more minutes at this speed, then we'll have to shut down. Danny checked their position. We're still 2 hours from the edge of human space. Jake felt the weight of command settle on his shoulders. His decision to save Zara had put his entire crew at risk. A logical captain might consider surrendering her to save the ship. But logic wasn't always the human way. Beth, he said, send another transmission to Colonial Authority. Tell them we need immediate assistance. Include our current position and the fact that we're being pursued by an armed corporate vessel. Sir, Beth said hesitantly, even if they send help, it won't reach us in time. Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. Danny, who had served with him for 5 years and never questioned a difficult order. Beth, who could have worked for any major corporation but chose to serve on a small salvage ship. Carlos, who could make broken engines run through pure determination. And Zara, who had survived 3 years alone in hell and still apologized for taking scraps to keep warm. Then we'll have to find another way, Jake said. We don't abandon our people, not ever. The corporate ship continued to gain ground, its superior engines slowly closing the distance. On the Profit Margins Bridge, Captain Thorne smiled coldly as he watched his prey struggle to escape. but he underestimated something important about humans. When cornered, they didn't just fight harder. They got creative. And Jake Morrison was about to show the galaxy exactly what that meant. The engines of the Frontier's Edge finally gave out just 20 minutes from the edge of human space. Carlos had pushed them far beyond their limits, but even his engineering skills couldn't work miracles forever. The ship drifted to a stop, power failing throughout the vessel. "Emergency power only," Carlos reported over the intercom, his voice exhausted. "Life support is stable, but we can't run from them anymore." Jake stood on the bridge, looking at the tactical display. The profit margin would reach them in less than an hour. His crew gathered around him, Danny, Beth, Lisa, and Carlos, who had left the engine room when there was nothing more he could do. "Options?" Jake asked. Danny checked their weapon systems. "We've got basic defensive shields and 2 small plasma cannons. The corporate ship has military-grade armor and enough firepower to blow us apart in seconds. We could try to negotiate," Beth suggested. "Maybe offer them something else in exchange for Zara." "Like what?" Lisa asked. "We don't have anything they want except her." Jake was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he looked up at his crew with the expression they had never seen before. It was the look of a man who had made a decision that would change everything. "Beth," he said, "I want you to send a message on all frequencies. Emergency broadcast, maximum power. Sir? Tell everyone what happened here. The whole story. How the Hegemony Corporation abandoned the Velrani workers to die. How we found Zara living like an animal in the ruins. How they're trying to take her back as property." Jake's voice grew stronger. "And tell them that we're not going to let that happen." Beth stared at him. "Captain, if we broadcast that on all frequencies, everyone will hear it. News services, government agencies, other ships, civilian populations across multiple star systems." "Good," Jake said firmly. "I want everyone to know." "But sir," Danny said, "once we make this public, there's no going back. The corporation will have to respond. This becomes a major incident." Jake looked at Zara, who had been listening quietly. She was wearing clothes from Lisa's personal wardrobe now, clean and healthy looking for the first time in years. Her blue skin patches glowed with their natural light, and her large dark eyes were clear and alert. "Zara," Jake said, "this is your choice too. If we do this, it means fighting. The corporation won't back down easily, and neither will we. Are you ready for that?" Zara was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was steady and sure. "My people died believing no one cared what happened to them. If there's a chance to make sure this never happens to anyone else, then yes, I'm ready," Jake nodded. "Beth, start broadcasting." Beth's fingers flew over her controls, setting up the emergency transmission. "Ready, sir." "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human vessel Frontier's Edge," Jake began, his voice carrying across space to anyone within range. "We are broadcasting an emergency message to all ships and stations in this sector. We have rescued a survivor from the abandoned mining station in the Kepler 442 system. Her name is Zara, and she is a member of the Velrani species." The message continued as Jake explained everything they had discovered. How the Velrani workers had been trapped by impossible contracts. How they had been abandoned when the station became unprofitable. How Zara had survived alone for 3 years, eating garbage and wearing rags to stay alive. "The Hegemony Corporation is now demanding that we return Zara to them as company property," Jake said. "They claim she belongs to them until her debt is paid, but we have seen the contracts. They were designed to never be paid off. This is slavery disguised as employment." As Jake spoke, Beth monitored the communication channels. The response was immediate and massive. News services picked up the broadcast within minutes. Government agencies began requesting more information. Ships throughout the sector started changing course to investigate. "We are currently dead in space," Jake continued. "Our engines failed while trying to reach human territory. The corporate security vessel Profit Margin under Captain Vex Thorn will reach us within the hour. They have threatened to take Zara by force." Jake paused, looking around at his crew. They were all watching him with expressions of pride and determination. "I want to make something clear," Jake said into the transmitter. "Zara is not property. She is a person who has suffered enough. She is under human protection now, and we will not abandon her. If the Hegemony Corporation wants to take her, they will have to go through us first." The transmission ended, but Beth kept all channels open. Almost immediately, responses began flooding in. "Captain," Beth said, her voice filled with excitement, "I'm getting messages from everywhere. News organizations want interviews. The Human Colonial Authority is demanding more information about the corporate contracts. 3 different civil rights groups are filing emergency legal petitions." "More importantly," Danny added, checking the sensor displays, "I'm reading several ships changing course toward our position. Some of them are big." Within 30 minutes, the space around the frontier's edge was no longer empty. A Velreni passenger ship had been the first to arrive, having been traveling through the sector when they heard the broadcast. The captain immediately offered assistance and demanded to speak with Zara. "This is Captain Nira of the Velreni ship Starlight Path," came the transmission. "We heard your message about our sister Zara. Is she truly safe?" Jake brought Zara to 2, the communication station. When she spoke to her own people for the first time in 3 years, there wasn't a dry eye on the bridge. "I am alive," Zara said in her native language, her voice breaking with emotion. "The humans saved me. They gave me food and clothes and called me family." More ships arrived. A human news vessel appeared, followed by a scientific research ship, whose crew wanted to document the corporate abuse. A merchant vessel carrying trade goods stopped to offer supplies, but the most important arrival came just as the Profit Margin reached weapons range at the frontier's edge. "Captain Morrison," Beth announced, "I'm reading multiple ship signatures dropping out of hyperspace. It's a Human Colonial Authority battle group." Jake felt relief wash over him. The cavalry had arrived. The lead ship was the heavy cruiser Independence, commanded by Admiral Sarah Kim. Her transmission cut through all other communications with military authority. "Corporate vessel Profit Margin. This is Admiral Kim of the Human Colonial Authority. You are ordered to stand down immediately. This area is now under Colonial Authority jurisdiction." Captain Thorne's response was predictably cold. "Admiral, we are operating under legal salvage and recovery rights. The humans aboard that vessel have stolen corporate property. We demand its return." "Negative," Admiral Kim replied firmly. "We have reviewed the evidence provided by Captain Morrison. The individual you refer to as property is a refugee seeking asylum. She is under human protection." Jake watched the tactical display as more ships continued to arrive. What had started as a simple rescue was becoming a major diplomatic incident. The corporate ship was now surrounded by vessels from multiple species, all demanding answers about the treatment of alien workers. "Thorne," Jake said, opening a direct channel to the corporate ship, "look around you. The whole galaxy is watching now. Everyone knows what your company did. How many more Velreni workers have you abandoned on other stations? How many more are suffering right now?" There was a long silence before Thorne responded. "You have made a serious mistake, human. The Hegemony Corporation has resources you cannot imagine. Legal teams, political connections, economic leverage. We will recover our property, and you will face consequences for this interference. Let them come," Jake said calmly. "Every legal team they send, every political connection they use, every economic threat they make will be public knowledge now." The galaxy is watching, and people don't like bullies. Admiral Kim's voice cut in again. Captain Thorne, you have 30 seconds to withdraw from this area. If you do not comply, we will consider your presence a hostile act. Jake could see Thorne's dilemma on the tactical display. The corporate ship was fast and well armed, but it was also completely outnumbered. A fight would mean certain destruction, but backing down would mean losing face and admitting that the corporation couldn't protect its interests. This is not over, Thorne finally transmitted. The Hegemony Corporation will pursue this matter through proper legal channels. The profit margin slowly turned away and jumped to hyperspace, leaving the growing fleet of ships surrounding the frontier's edge. Jake slumped into his captain's chair, finally allowing himself to feel the exhaustion of the past day. They had won this battle, but Thorne was right about one thing. The war was just beginning. Captain, Zara said quietly, what happens now? Jake looked at her, this small alien woman who had somehow become the center of a galactic incident. Now, we go home, he said, and we make sure this never happens to anyone else. On the view screen, ships from a dozen different species floated in space, united by a simple human principle, that every person, no matter what species, deserved dignity and freedom. The stand was over, but the real fight was just beginning. 3 weeks later, Jake Morrison stood in the main conference room of the Human Colonial Authority headquarters on New Geneva. The room was packed with representatives from dozens of different species, news reporters, and legal experts. At the center of it all sat Zara, no longer the frightened, starving creature he had found searching through garbage. She wore a formal Velreni robe provided by her own people, but she also carried Jake's thermal jacket folded neatly in her lap. The investigation is complete, announced Judge Patricia Wells, the human legal officer overseeing the case. We have found evidence of systematic abuse by the Hegemony Corporation across 47 different mining and industrial operations. Conservative estimates suggest over 3,000 alien workers were abandoned in similar circumstances over the past decade. The room erupted in angry voices from the alien delegates. The Velreni representative, Captain Nira, stood up with tears in her large dark eyes. 3,000 of our people. 3,000 souls left to die in darkness while the corporation counted profits. Jake watched as the judge continued reading her findings. The legal process had been swift once the evidence became public. Ships from multiple species had traveled to other abandoned Hegemony Corporation sites and found the remains of worker camps. Some survivors had been discovered, but most locations yielded only bones and empty buildings. The Hegemony Corporation is hereby ordered to pay compensation to all affected families, Judge Wells announced. Additionally, all contracts involving alien workers are declared null and void. Any remaining workers in corporate custody are to be released immediately. Behind Jake, Beth Williams whispered, Captain, look at screen 7. Jake turned to see a news feed showing corporate headquarters on Centauri Prime. Hegemony Corporation stock had crashed when the story broke. Their other business partners were canceling contracts. Several of their executives had been arrested by their own planetary governments. Furthermore, the judge continued, this court recognizes the actions of Captain Morrison and the crew of the Frontier's Edge. Their willingness to risk everything for a single refugee has exposed one of the greatest humanitarian crimes in recent galactic history. The room filled with applause. Jake felt uncomfortable with the attention, but he understood its importance. The story had become bigger than just one rescued Velreni. It had become a symbol of what happened when people chose to do the right thing instead of the profitable thing. After the official proceedings ended, Jake found himself alone with Zara in a smaller meeting room. She was staring out the window at the orbital shipyards, where new vessels were being built with improved worker protection standards. Penny, for your thoughts? Jake asked, using an old human expression. Zara smiled. In the week since her rescue, she had learned many human phrases and customs. I was thinking about my people who died on the station. They would be happy to know that others will not suffer the same fate. What are your plans now? Jake asked. Captain Nira offered you a position on her ship. Your own people want to take care of you. Zara was quiet for a moment. The Velrani way is to think of the group first, always. Individual desires come second to the needs of the community. For my entire life I was taught that this was the only correct way to live. She turned from the window to face Jake. But living with your crew taught me something different. You showed me that individual worth matters too. That one person's suffering is important, even if helping them creates problems for everyone else. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Jake asked. Both, Zara said with a small laugh. It makes life more complicated, but also more meaningful. Captain Nira's offer is generous, but I have already found my place. Jake raised an eyebrow. Oh, if you will have me, I would like to stay with the frontier's edge. Your crew became my family when I had none. I want to continue serving with you. Jake felt a warmth in his chest. Over the past weeks, Zara had proven herself invaluable. Her knowledge of alien cultures and languages had helped them communicate with the various species investigating the corporation. Her technical skills, learned during years of survival in the maintenance tunnels, rivaled Carlos's engineering expertise. The offer's always open, Jake said. But are you sure? Life on a salvage ship isn't glamorous. We're not heroes or diplomats. We just fix things and haul cargo. You fix broken things and help people who need it, Zara corrected. That sounds exactly like what I want to do. A few hours later, Jake stood on the bridge of the Frontier's edge as they prepared to leave New Geneva. The ship had been repaired and upgraded with new engines, courtesy of the Human Colonial Authority. They had also been given a new mission, not just salvage, but also welfare checks on remote stations and mining operations. Final systems check complete, Carlos reported from the engine room. New engines are running smooth as silk. Communication. Array is upgraded and ready, Beth added. We can now maintain contact with Colonial Authority from anywhere in known space. Danny looked up from his navigation console. Course plotted for the Vega sector. 3 abandoned mining stations to investigate. Should take about 2 weeks. Jake looked around his bridge. His crew was the same, but somehow everything felt different. They were still the same small salvage ship they had always been, but now they carried a responsibility that went beyond just making a living. Captain, Zara said from her new position at the science station, I'm reading several news feeds about the Hegemony Corporation. Their remaining operations are being shut down. Across the galaxy, thousands of workers are being freed. Jake nodded. Any word on Captain Thorne? He's been arrested by the Karathi Trade Authority. Apparently, his own government decided that his actions brought shame to their species. He's facing charges for crimes against sentient beings. Beth looked up from her communications console. Speaking of news feeds, Captain, you might want to see this. She put the main galactic news network on the view screen. The lead story showed a ceremony on the Velrani homeworld where a monument was being dedicated to the workers who had died in corporate custody. But the centerpiece of the memorial wasn't Velrani. It was a statue of a human in a spacesuit, reaching out to help a fallen figure. The monument honors not just the Velrani who died, the news reporter was saying, but also the human who showed the galaxy that individual compassion can overcome institutional cruelty. Captain Jake Morrison's actions have inspired similar rescue missions throughout known space. Jake felt his face turn red with embarrassment. Turn it off, Beth. Actually, sir, Danny said with a grin, I think the crew wants to hear this. The reporter continued, the Galactic Council has announced new regulations requiring regular welfare checks on all remote operations involving alien workers. These regulations are being called the Morrison Protocols in honor of the human captain, who risked everything to save one abandoned refugee. Jake shook his head. Great. Now my name is attached to a bunch of bureaucratic paperwork. Could be worse, Carlos called from engineering. They could have named a disease after you. The crew laughed, and Jake felt the familiar comfort of being surrounded by people who understood him. This was his real family, the people who had stood with him when he made the hardest decision of his career. All right, Jake said, settling into his captain's chair. Enough fame and glory. We've got work to do. Danny, take us out of orbit. As the Frontier's Edge moved away from New Geneva and into hyperspace, Jake reflected on the past month. They had started as a simple salvage crew looking for scrap metal and computer cores. Now they were part of something bigger, a network of ships and people dedicated to making sure no one was ever abandoned and forgotten again. Captain, Zara said quietly, thank you. For what? For showing me that home isn't a place. It's the people who refuse to leave you behind. Jake smiled and looked out at the stars ahead of them. Somewhere out there, other people might be in trouble, other forgotten souls who needed help. And the crew of the Frontier's Edge would be ready, because that's what humans did. They saw someone searching through trash for rags to keep warm, and they offered a blanket and a home. It was the simplest thing in the galaxy, and the most powerful.